Okay, we're going to start our meeting today, and I welcome everybody back from their summer vacation. I hope it was a nice vacation. Before we get started, I just wanted to make two comments before I welcome some of our guests. Gracie won't be here today. She's having surgery, and I know that all of our thoughts and prayers are with her for a speedy recovery, and we will miss her a lot, as we always do. And Alex has a work emergency, so he couldn't make it. He called at the last minute. Well, we expect David here any minute.
We do.
Just before we get started, I always like to introduce everybody. We have a lot of guests today, which is great. And I want to introduce everybody to Darrell Anderson, the chairman of the Democratic Central Committee. And Delegate Charles Barkley is here. Senator Cheryl Kagan is here. Arthur Edmonds, vice chairman of the Democratic Central Committee. And Barbara Sanders from League of Women Voters, and Nancy Farrar representing the Montgomery County Republican Party. And everybody else I won't introduce because I'll make a mistake and I'll make more enemies than friends. On a sad note, I just wanted to make a comment. Kathy Driscoll, representing Sidney Katz. Kathy, thank you. Welcome. City of Gaithersburg, okay. For the whole city. Better. On a sad note, welcome, Dave. We just got started. On a sad note, our former president of the board, Sam Statlin, wife recently passed away, and I understand from Margaret that she also worked at the Board of Elections as a election judge recruiter. So our thoughts and prayers go out to Sam Statlin, who I've known for almost 20 years, and condolences to him and his family. He's a really good man, good guy. Did you want to say anything?
Yes, I certainly will. I've known Sam and Ann for a number of years, and they are a wonderful family, and Ann was just a lovely, delightful person, and was involved in so much of Sam's work, not the least of which was the board, and she was always talking to me when I saw her over the past 4 years about, how things were going at the board, how I was enjoying it, and we shared little stories. So, yes, I'm very sad. She fought a very valiant battle with dreadful disease, as we all know cancer is. And I know many of us are planning to go either this evening to Gawler's funeral home to be with the family, or to the service tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much. Margaret, do we want to do the public comments first?
We're going to do the minutes
first.
Yeah, we do the minutes.
Okay. All right, we're going to approve the July 27th, 2015 board meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at it? Any comments about the minutes? Any changes or modifications? Anybody?
I move we accept the minute.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. I don't think there's any additions to the agenda, Margaret.
No, sir.
No additions? Okay. We're going to have public comments, and we appreciate people taking the time to either come and comment or to listen, because by you being here, it's certainly an indication of your interest in community affairs and what we do here, and we really appreciate the fact that you're here and participating. It's very important to us. Generally, our rules are, Margaret, that a speaker has about 3 minutes to speak, and we welcome those comments. And do we have an order that we're going to call people?
We do. The first person on the list is Senator Cheryl Kagan. If you would come up to this chair here so that we get you on the recording.
Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for letting me come before you. It's nice to see so many familiar faces, and congratulations to the new folks. And Mr. Chairman, I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I also am sad about Ann Statlin, and her daughter Julie is also an activist and leader in the county. I'm here for two reasons. I know that we're primarily talking about early voting, but I thought I would share with you a letter that I sent to Linda Lamone, and we got a response the other day, and so I wanted you all to have a copy of it. This Mr. Chairman, you get the original.
Oh, thank you.
And then I don't know whether we give to staff or if you just want to pass it around. My concern was about the Board of Public Works canceling the contract for education about the voting systems. I think we've got to make sure that our voters are educated and comfortable with the new system so that we don't have long lines, which can be a disincentive to people coming out to vote. It's another reason why early voting locations are so important, because obviously the more people that vote early, the fewer problems and the shorter the lines we have on Election Day. So for all of those reasons, I think this is an important issue. Ms. Lamone indicated that they are working on a backup plan. They originally had no plan B, is what they testified in the Board of Public Works, which is a concern. So they're working on a plan B, which I think is important. And I, in my role as a senator, and obviously you all in your leadership of the county, I know are going to be working to make sure that Montgomery County voters are ready to use the new systems. So happy to take questions about that after my remarks about early voting, if you have any. I know that you guys have to make hard decisions, and you're looking to continue some sites, maybe move others. I'm here to advocate for locations in both Gaithersburg and Rockville. They were the 4th and 5th highest turnout with over 12.5% at each location. Gaithersburg works super well from a lot of perspectives. It is, as you know, very convenient on 355, from 270, from 370. It's the terminus of the ICC. People know where it is because it's right next to a high school, so it's a community gathering place, and it's easy to get to for people from Germantown and north, as well as folks from other directions. Parking is super great in that location. The two challenges that I would flag for you at that location, one was there was a concern about being able to keep literature overnight, and we were told that would be possible, but I think people on site didn't have that information. So if we can clarify that, assuming Gaithersburg comes forward in the future, I know that candidates and the political parties would be grateful for that, so as not to kind of schlep back and forth at early hours and late hours. I think that would be appreciated. I think it would, 10 seconds left?
That's all right.
You had two issues.
Signage in from entering by the high school could also, I think, be improved so that people can get to Bohr more easily. The Rockville site, it's the county seat. People work there. People go there at lunchtime and for dinner. It's an important population center. People are also very used to voting there at the EOB. Parking is an issue, and I would love to brainstorm with you. I've spoken to folks, mayor and council and senior staff in both Rockville and Gaithersburg. They're happy to answer questions, address concerns, and work with you in any way that's helpful in order to make sure that both those sites are super successful locations for next April and next November. And with that, if I'm over time, I will stop to respect what I'm sure is going to be a busy meeting. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks, Senator.
Next speaker is Delegate Barkley.
You all can sit. You don't have to be
I
so
know, but
formal.
it's, I'm a former teacher, so rarely do I sit in the classroom. So usually I move around and I talk to people and say something to them. When the kid's bad, kind of put your hand on their shoulder so they're not.
Thank
you should do that.
David was in that category. I've known him forever.
Yeah.
So I am Delegate Charles Barkley. I live right up here in Seneca Park, just up the street. So I always appreciate it when you do things right here. It makes it really convenient. It took me 5 minutes to get here. And it's nice to be here and see a lot of my friends, actually in both parties. I've been around for a while, so people tend to know me. I've been in the House now 17 years. I only got a couple things I want to say. First of all, if anybody's thinking about not doing early voting, get that out of your mind, because I think early voting has been great no matter what party you're in. It gives our citizens another opportunity to come out and express their choices, and I think we need to keep it. I also think we need to keep 9 senators. I don't know if you're thinking about changing the number of senators, but I want you to think about that. Senator Kagan talked about Gaithersburg and Rockville. I think those are good points, but I will also throw in Germantown. Since I live in Germantown, it's a little bit above the other two, but I think adding Borough Park did not take away from Germantown at all. It gave our up-county citizens 2 different places that they could go, so I think that was real good. I know I'm not in the down county area, but the Wheaton Community Center, I think you have to do something somewhere in that area to allow people to vote. So I would encourage you, if you're not doing the center, go somewhere else. I know the Board of Elections had a real concern about that, mainly financial, because you said you couldn't afford it. And I've seen your budget. I've worked with your budget for years, so I agree with you. You probably can. But I saw the letter out there today from the county council and the county exec said that they would cover the cost. So I would hope that you would replace that center somewhere in the Wheaton community, because we have a lot of, I call them underserved population that needs to have a chance to come out and vote. They don't have a lot of transportation, so I think you need to keep it right there. And my last concern I'll just mention is I've never really been crazy over the years about the Damascus site, because I think it's too far up. But at the same time, I think we have a growing community in Clarksburg and Damascus. And so I would say we probably need to keep that site, even though it's not been one of my favorites. It is one of the lower turnout sites. But for the up-county and for the growing population up there, I would ask you to maintain that. So that's basically all I have to say. I really want to thank you for your time, because I know how hard this job is. And I appreciate everything you do every day for the citizens.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Thank
Delegate.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, those are the only speakers, too early voting issues. Our next speaker is Pat Finetti.
Hi, thank you for taking
Welcome,
the time
Pat.
this evening.
Welcome.
And my name is Pat Finati. I'm on the Republican Central Committee. But I'm here to address 2 things today. One is early voting signage, and the other is getting information to political parties, getting voter information to. First, I live in Damascus. And in the early voting last year, the sign there was about this big. It was on a superhighway. 27 is super. It's a fast-moving road. And it was not easily seen. And there was all kinds of words on it. My concern is that people don't see that, don't know about that. The other thing is we have a lot of people coming out of Clarksburg every day after 27. A sign there would also say go to Damascus, because it's a lot closer to that than to Germantown or Gaithersburg. And I suggest the signs have a lot fewer words. I made up some things. I'm not a graphic artist, so I'm saying just have something like a big logo that you always use, and then just vote here, or vote here today, or vote in Damascus with this arrow. And if you need to put other words, put little words on the bottom, but don't have. I could hardly read that sign as I was standing across the street from it. There was so much verbiage on it. So that's my suggestion. I'm going to leave these here. You can do the signs both point the same way, and you can, if it's the other way, they both point the same way too. There. So anyway, I think I have these words written down. And then the other thing I've talked to you, Marjorie, about getting voter information to political parties. It used to be that when voter information was not available electronically as it is today, that we used to be able to come, the Central Committee would be able to come and get a list of all the new voters in that month. And we always had that. Now, in order to get any information like that, we have to pay $80 every month to get a disc. And I contend that it's cheaper to create a new disc than it was to create all that paper. And I would like to be able to have more voter information available to the parties. So that's, at $80 a month, that's $960 a year. That's quite a bit of money. And I just think it would be easier to find some way for us to get information. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
May I ask you a question?
sure, absolutely.
What is on this list that you're getting every month?
All voter names.
This is the registration?
Registration.
New registration.
All I would like is new registration.
So, okay,
But
you're just talking about the new registered voters that month.
right.
Okay.
And you
But
get it now on
that's-
paper?
No.
We used to get them on paper
Okay.
before we had them available on disc.
Okay.
And now that they're on disc, we have to come in and buy that disc for $80 every month in order to get that information. And I think it's just as easy to put it on a disc as it was to print it out, and probably a lot faster and less expensive. I mean, if we needed to pay for the discs, 25 cents or whatever it is, we could do that. But that's my big issue, that I would like to be able to contact new voters and et cetera. So,
Thank you.
Anybody
Pat,
have
leave
any
those signs?
yeah, I'm going to put this.
Great.
Should I put it out on the desk?
Just leave it there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's my
Thank
thing in the sign there too.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President, there is one other person that signed up to speak on what topic, I'm not sure. Shane Rock,
Okay.
are you here?
I am.
Welcome,
Okay,
Shane.
do you want to come up to the table?
I promise to be very brief.
Welcome.
My apologies for being late. My name's Shane Rock. I'm the CEO of Interfaith Works. And this is a 43-year-old organization that serves people in Montgomery County experiencing poverty or homelessness. We serve more than 20,000 people throughout the county each year. I've brought some copies of a poverty map of the county using the latest census data. My plea to you is this. I think it's extraordinarily important recognizing the obstacles that people facing poverty and homelessness face, that we take into consideration where people live in the county who are struggling with low wages, with difficulty in transportation, and with low income, because they have the most trouble getting to the polls. I think you've done a really nice job of setting up criteria that take that into account, but this map gives you better information in terms of the geographic location of polling places for early voting vis-a-vis where people live. So I ask you to consider this, and I thank you very much. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it?
That's it.
Well, thank you for anybody that came to speak or listen. Thank you very much, and you're certainly all welcome to stay for our meeting. I think we go now to the election director reports.
Yes, with regards to personnel, the temporary personnel have been working on developing the state mandated polling place surveys, and they're nearly complete, and we anticipate that the expected deadline of the September 3rd will be met for the completion of the survey. The equipment delivery has started. Some of the state acquired equipment and the required processing steps to accept the new equipment will begin in September. Additionally, interviews are taking place for the office services clerical position and voter registration. This will be a bilingual position. The position of the voter registration manager is in the Office of Management and Budget for request to have a waiver for the hiring freeze. And currently the election aid position is posted for the temporary positions that we will be hiring, and this does include the outreach positions that the county allocated funds for.
How many of those, Margaret?
Well, there's X amount of hours, so we're going to be hiring anywhere from 4 to 6 individuals because most of the outreach events are 3 to 4 hours long.
Okay.
And I believe it's 2,000 hours, workforce hours.
No.
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but we'll be hiring several part-time individuals.
No, that's correct. It was budgeted out at 2 part-time positions, so that would be a total of 2,080 hours.
But most of the outreach events are 3 to 4 hours long, so we'll be hiring and it's on Saturdays and Sundays and after in the evenings, so we have to balance all of that. Going on to the next topic, the budget. Ms. Roars provided spreadsheets related to the budget in the advance packet.
2 spreadsheets were provided. The latest information from FY15, which is still not finalized, but the latest information is there for you, as well as the first spreadsheet for FY16, which shows no expenditure under personnel because it hasn't been uploaded to the system yet for me to pull.
Can you provide us one copy of the report?
You have an extra one?
Yeah, extra one.
Thanks.
I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, sure.
You can probably guess my pet peeve is I noticed, first of all, this is as of August 3rd, so it's almost a month later now, and I don't know whether
Oh, thanks.
for FY15.
Thank you.
But this is showing 87,000, almost 88,000 surplus. At what point does this close out? When?
Normally sometime in September. We still haven't seen all the chargebacks in this from the print shop and from the mailroom. And you'll recall there were extensive mailings that went out in May and June. And so this is still not, we have still not seen final figures from the print shop. I think telecommunications is now finalized, but the print shop is not.
You think it will be $80,000? More?
There's no way for me to tell, which is why we always have to leave some money in there. We have not received all the reports back from the print shop, so I can't go through them and come up with any definitive information for you.
Everything is in from the state.
Yes.
Yes, all the payments
all,
were
yeah.
made from the state.
So the print shop is and mailing that's county.
Yes.
Why so long after the close of the fiscal year is that stuff coming in?
I can't provide you with an answer to that. The departments have to go through and they have to tally up the expenses, and they have to prepare the chargebacks and the journal entries so that the money can be transferred in and out. I don't know what the other department processes are, but certainly.
When did you submit invoices or whatever the procedure
we were
for
submitting
these?
print shop requests up until the last day of June. So it there were print shop requests and mailings that were being done on the last day of June, and so they would need to be taken care of, and then they would need to be calculated out, and then charge entries would need to be done. Journal entries would need to be done to move the money.
I imagine those would be pretty small, though. Are the big chunk, I would assume, comes around. You're shaking your head.
No, we had extensive mailings in May and June because that is when we were doing most of the confirmation mailings. I recall there was a 35,000 piece mailing.
Confirmation of registration?
Of voter registrations, sample ballots and changes of address came back. We were returned to this office, and we have to send, according to SPD regulations, a confirmation mailing out. So there were significant mailings in the months of May and June.
Just to elaborate, a lot of that was the multi-state information. It was the ERIC information that we were getting from other states after they completed their election, closed out their registration process and scanned their poll books and what have you, and then sent that information along to Maryland.
Well, as you know, I'm always a little bit upset when I see money that ultimately is going to go back when we're always scrambling for the little nickels and dimes that we need for activities, and this still looks like it's going to be a chunk of money returned to the county. Thank you.
What's non-metropolitan area travel?
That's travel to training, election center certification classes, conferences that are outside of the local area.
Thank you.
How do we spend more than the approved amount?
I'm sorry, can you give me a specific, which spreadsheet and which line item,
I'm
please?
looking at the same line item that Jackie just pointed out. It seems like we've overspent our travel in both metropolitan area travel and non-metropolitan area travel.
6A021.
Yeah. Well, we are always under budget in terms of metropolitan area travel. That's one of those line items we continually request additional funding for when we go through the budget process. That line item is the line item that covers all of the reimbursements for all of our staff who go back and forth to polling places to do phone checks and other things. Non-metropolitan area travel, that was a couple thousand over, and that was partly due to the biennial conference, because that we sent more people went, and it was more expensive than was budgeted for. Those are typically items, as you may recall, and I'm repeating myself, I apologize, that we do try to alert the Office of Management and Budget that we don't have sufficient funding in that to maintain the certifications that staff needs to, and to do the local travel that we need to do to ensure that the polling places are set up properly, have the proper connectivity and everything else. And those are areas where we have not succeeded in getting the additional funding needed.
So when we are going to overspend the budget, is there anybody's approval who's needed, or do we just do it?
As long as we stay within the dollar amount of the overall operating budget, there's no issue.
Okay.
Voter registration, monthly statistics were posted at the beginning of the month as posted on our website.
I guess that's why I'm confused with the comments from Pat regarding what it is she's getting. Because she's getting the individual names, right, on that disc that costs $80. And what we get in the report is just the overall numbers of how many people have registered during the course of the month. Gotcha. Thank you.
Going on to the State Board of Elections. The State Board of Elections met on August 27th. The State Board directed SBE staff to continue to work with DeWitt to reduce the scope of the consultant contract for resubmission to the Board of Public Works. The State Board encourages local boards to send letters to request reinstatement of funding. They did send a letter, and they this morning I did request that they send us a copy of that because we have not received it. And then once we have a copy of it, we can prepare our letter to go to the Board of Public Works. Right now, they are estimating that they will go before the Board of Public Works in mid-October. The agenda also presented to the State Board members the regulations for same-day voter registration. The proposed regulations were adopted and are available for comment in the Maryland Register. And Kevin Karpinski is prepared to discuss this matter with the board.
Excuse me, Margaret, may I ask you how they did send letters when you said they have a letter prepared but they haven't sent it? Did they send that by U.S.
No, they
Postal?
sent the letter, but they haven't shared the letter with the local boards of election.
And in what manner will they do that? Will they do
I'm
it by
hoping
fax, by email, by...
I believe they'll send it by email.
Yeah, and just, we talked about this last month, Jackie, they've asked the local boards, once they send a letter to the local boards, to send another letter, basically, in support of the state board's position.
What, is there a deadline for us, Kelly, on this letter we have to send?
They asked that we hold off on doing anything until they had sent the letter, so assuming that we get that letter this week, then we'll start circulating a letter to the board next week for review.
Okay.
And then finally, the State Board staff announced that the software fix was completed and approved by the Election Assistance Commission. The software was provided to SBE. They went through their process, and they have started reloading the equipment with the correct software. The State Department of Information Technology is helping the State Board manage this new voting system contract, and the assistance is there for implementation and contract issues as the project continues to roll out. We did, if you checked our Facebook page, last Thursday and Friday, we did post that we started receiving some of our equipment. So that's about it for now.
Jim, may I ask a question?
Sure.
On the early voting, are we going to have the regular voting there as a demonstration? Is it at every early voting site, is there going to be the ability of people to see and maybe look at, touch, feel, whatever, try the election, the regular election voting?
No,
Mechanism.
there is not enough equipment, and I'm going to talk about that.
Oh,
further
okay,
in this
okay.
Last month, we talked about two things. One was same-day voter registration and address changes and special elections by mail. The letter went to the state board with regard to the special election by mail regulations. In essence, we were requesting that the board be able to canvass the ballots that are returned by mail on election night, so there wouldn't be a delay in the results of posting the results. So that's there. I don't believe the state has taken any further action with regard to those regulations.
So again, in the future, special elections, people will be able to vote by mail?
If the county council were to hold a special election, they could they could potentially request, instead of having a precinct-based voting process, they could request that the entire election be conducted by mail.
And that would be
one voting center. So there'd have to be one voting center for election day, but then everyone would be mailed a ballot, postage prepaid, that you could then fill out your ballot and return it. So let's take a councilmanic whatever race. That ballot would go out to all registered voters within that council district, and they could either elect to return that by mail or go to at least, the statute requires at least one voting center within that district to vote on election day.
And they have to take their ballot with them? That's the only ballot they get?
No, the ballot would be delivered 14 days before the election. You could get it in your, at home, fill it out, and mail it right back.
But if they go to the voting center, do they have to take the ballot that they got in the mail?
No.
Yes,
No.
yes, they would, because if they did not, they would have to vote a provisional ballot.
So they have to bring it.
Right. So they have to take it then. And then when they're mailed back in, what do we do with them?
Well, that's the thing, which is that they're being treated as absentee ballots. So those that are mailed back are then they were not counted until the Thursday after the election. So if you had a situation where you had a lot of people that decided they were just going to return their ballot by mail, on election night we really wouldn't have much in terms of election results, because we'd be holding these ballots until 10 o'clock the Thursday following the election, which that was the concern that I had raised.
Then we have to go through every one of them, just
Right.
like we do.
Correct.
But we've asked that the votes that have come in be counted on election day.
And that's
And
the
then-
letter that was sent out,
Right.
which was to say, don't treat them like absentee ballots. I mean, the whole point is to go ahead and be able to have those that are in-house on election night, have us be able to go ahead and count those so that those totals can be posted, so the candidates and the public have obviously we're still going to have a canvass, because there are going to be some ballots that come in after election day, but the vast majority of them would be prepared and ready to be counted that night.
How?
Well, now as soon as the polls close or during the day, you could begin canvassing the ballots and not post anything until after the polls close.
By hand, by us, as we do other
No.
things?
No.
There's a way to put them in?
It would require, if the state board, with the consent of the legislature, were to go forward with this type of election, there's some software that's going to have to be purchased by the state board to assist the local board in processing those return absentee, or the return election by mail. It's the special election by mail is used a lot more frequently west of here. Okay, California, Washington, Oregon, Texas, all, and many jurisdictions conduct special elections by mail to reduce the cost of conducting these smaller elections. And what occurs is when the equipment comes back, or I'm sorry, when the voted ballot comes back, you scan it, and the technology is available to help us confirm the signature, and then it comes back and we prep it, and then at a certain point, so for instance in Nebraska, what we would do is we would begin tabulating those return ballots approximately 10 a.m. They would be counted all day long, and then at 8 o'clock we would post those election results. And we would keep counting everything that had been processed correctly until whenever the last ballot was tabulated. And then you would continue to count again on Thursday at 10 a.m. like you currently do.
Thank you. But it's hand opening an envelope and hand scanning it into something.
Well, we could, I mean, there's equipment there that can do high-speed scanning. I'm quite sure that the state of Washington, King County, and Portland, Oregon, whatever the county's name is, they're not using a hand process. I don't, do you want to weigh in
We've
on
had
this?
some conversations just to spec out the type of equipment that other states are using, other counties and other states where they do more vote by mail and do open those envelopes earlier and faster. And what I've come to understand is that we're pretty large for the volume that we do in the very manual way that we do it. There are plenty of other counties out there in other states of our size that have sorting equipment that sorts and opens those envelopes in manners that are a lot more efficient than what we do here. There's still a lot of manual processes involved then, but we're sort of on the cusp, if we had much more volume, of needing to go toward a more automated direction.
The state board buys that equipment, and are they in the bill? Is it to buy that? Is there something to buy that equipment for the larger counties?
Well, the legislation passed 2 years ago, and we certainly advocated that the state board purchase the equipment, but at this time I believe they're been focused on purchasing the new voting equipment. I don't believe they've focused on upgrading the software, but that would be a question that the state board needs to be.
Margaret, so for our purposes, these would be special elections for a vacancy on the county council?
Correct.
County executive?
No.
Just county council?
County council. The county executive, there's a vacancy there. There's not an election to fill the county executive position.
So this only
By
applies
charter.
to vacancies on the county council?
Right.
So, for example, we had 2 in 1 year when Mr. and Mrs. Praisner passed away.
Right.
So it would be that kind of election. In most cases, it's very small scale in terms of the number. But the point would be that what I think we talked about last month, which is there's no reason in the world to wait 2 days to count those ballots.
Right.
I mean, we should be able to do that day.
Does it still work with a larger scale if it's an at-large vacancy?
I think it would be because, the reality is we do this to some extent for early voting. I mean, early voting results the tabulation begins on election day at 12 o'clock. And the reality is that they just don't get posted until, the polls close, and then those are the first results that get uploaded on election night. So
Is that going to be the reality with the new voting machines?
Yeah. So that's special elections by mail. The other is same-day voter registration, which I think is sort of a misnomer because it's voter registration during early voting as opposed to on election day. I don't have any. The question is whether the board wants to weigh in. We reviewed these last month. The one question that David raised was the issue of how you become the pre-qualified voter that's in the system, because as you'll recall, that is being worked upon by MVA and the state board as to how one is going to become on that pre-qualified list that will be available during early voting.
And if you're on the pre-qualified list, you don't vote provisionally, you vote on the machine.
Correct. Correct. And you'll recall, David, you said, how is this data exchange going to happen?
Right.
Margaret did as the board requested, followed up with the state board, and we were told we'd have information by today's meeting. We have not received it as of yet. My suggestion would be that we follow up with a more formal letter to the state board echoing concerns that, certainly it would be our expectation that a very formal process would be in place that would ensure the accuracy of the information that's being exchanged from MBA to the state board, which then in turn is sent to the local boards as the end user in terms of who's going to be a pre-qualified voter.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to suggest that you ask Kevin to draft such a letter and then send it to us to look at.
And I think it's a good idea. Does everybody agree?
Could I ask that it be done this week so that we can move on? Because, we've now been waiting a month and still no word.
And I
That's
would
good
like
suggestion.
Margaret you to remind me, please, what role Social Security plays in that. At one point, we talked about the fact that there would be a cross-check somehow with Social Security at some point as to people's citizenship, and I'd like to know where that stands.
Okay, with regards to that, I need to tell you that we are going to receive training on the same-day voter registration processes on September 11th. Right? Yeah, September 11th. And I'll be able to give, because if you read through the regulations, it's not very clear.
And who is being trained?
Myself, Allison, Janet, Jerry, and the entire Lisa, and the entire voter registration absentee team.
Okay.
So what this topic is, someone during the early voting days, they're not registered to vote, correct? But they go to an early voting site and they want to vote.
Right.
Can they?
Well, yeah, they can. And they fall into one of two categories.
Right.
They're either part of what's viewed as a pre-qualified individual. In other words, the election judge looks them up. They're been pre-qualified through this interface between MVA and the state
Like
board.
signing up at MVA?
They're signing up at the early voting site, so they become a registered voter, and then they can vote on the machine. I mean, they can vote a regular ballot that gets scanned in. Now, if they're not a pre-qualified
From MVA?
individual, correct, they'd have to vote provisionally.
And you may recall, Jim, that the reason why I raised an issue about this was because of some of the inaccuracies of the
Right.
data at MVA,
Right.
which seemed to miss my mother, who's been
That's right.
a registered voter for 5 decades in Montgomery County.
And had me as an alien. I just went in and got my new driver's license.
An alien?
And I said, you didn't ask me if I was registered to vote when we were all through. They said, oh, you can't vote, you're an alien. And I said, only my kids think that. In fact, I've been voting for any number of years. And he said, no, this thing on your driver's license, which I had never noticed, says that you're an alien. And I said, well, we went through a bit of a to-do. I got a little tense. And he called the supervisor over, and they went, and they got it. She said, oh, no, we'll call and find Social Security, I think it was, and find out whether or not you're an alien. And anyway, we got it sorted out, but that is the fact. That happened to me 6 weeks ago, that they said that I had been registered all of these years as an alien with MVA.
And my concern, as anyone who's been sitting at this table for the last couple of years knows, because we all have this concern, is that MVA's data has been such an issue for us overall that the idea that we're making distinctions in categories based on MVA's data is worrisome.
That was my
Absolutely
question.
worrisome.
But the bottom line is anybody who wants to vote early voting can vote, either on the machine or provisional.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So we don't stop anybody from voting
Correct.
who just walks in the door.
Correct.
Then provisional is better.
They do need to attest that they are a citizen of the United States. They're going to be 18 years of age.
But all they got to do is say it, though.
Well, under perjury.
If it helps, this is sort of an oversimplification, so the voter registration staff may grimace when they hear me describe it this way. But right now, let's say you register to vote and you register at the last minute, right at the voter registration deadline. We get your voter registration application, we process it based on the information that's given, and then we have a check process. We check to see if we can find you in the Motor Vehicle Administration data primarily. There also is a check with the Social Security Administration that we can do.
That's the one.
If we find you in the motor vehicle registration right now, then we say, okay, this person has, we've verified this person. And then what that effectively does is lift the requirement for us to check your ID as a first-time voter who registered by mail under the Federal Help America Vote Act. But we have this process where you clear the last trap if we get all of your information, your form is complete, it's all accurate, and then we find you. We find that match in the motor vehicle data. What this has done is sort of flip it on its head. So the data that we would be checking against in the motor vehicle data is now provided up front and is preloaded into those poll books. So if we find that match, we're applying effectively the same screen to say, okay, that's a voter, we've got the data, that we can go ahead and just let them vote the normal way. If we have a problem, then we have to research it, we treat it as a provisional. That's sort of the concept. The details of how it pulls together are
Right,
what
but
we
we're
need to
still
work
checking
through.
against a data set that we know has multiple problems.
Flaws all over.
Right.
Over-inclusive, under-inclusive, I mean, in all different directions. And as I understand it, the statute on this process says nothing about a difference between pre-qualified and non-pre-qualified voters. It treats all voters the same, whereas this regulation doesn't.
But the bottom line is, someone can walk into an early voting center and vote with no ID. Is that correct? All they got to do is say, under oath, that they're...
If they do, though, it will be a provisional ballot.
Yes, and see, those get checked. You will spend many an hour reviewing provisional ballots. They're not automatically counted. That's the difference. I mean, they can vote.
If they come through MVA, then they're voted and they're counted, and there's no way for us to check whether or not they are a citizen, whether or not they're, and that's not right, especially when I just had it happen to me. That
So
their data is not.
You had the opposite. You had them saying that you
but
couldn't vote when you can't.
It showed what their data was.
So if they're registered with MVA, they can vote the machine on early voting,
Right.
Yes.
Yep,
whether they're a citizen or not.
that's it.
And there's no way for us to check that. Exactly.
But again, they are taking an oath that's required under the Maryland Constitution. The same oath that you're going to fill out the same kind of paperwork you would if you're registering to vote. And that's all that the Maryland Constitution requires, is that you attest that you're 18, resident of Montgomery County in the state of Maryland, a U.S. citizen. There's
Okay.
no requirement to prove you're a citizen. You only have
That's
to-
true for regular registration.
Correct. And that will be processed by the staff. And that process will be if, for some reason, the voter notification form comes back, then we bring it to the board, and the board can refer it to the prosecutor.
Now, Social Security flags people that are not citizens, correct? And that you all are learning next week or whenever it was in 2 weeks how to flag people how to flag voters that are flagged in Social Security.
I'm going to defer to Kevin with regards to, I don't recall that the Social Security Administration is part of the regulatory process of a special election by mail. I'm sorry, of same-day voter registration.
Well, the bottom line is this, is that to register in Maryland, one, you don't need to show ID, and two, it is based upon your affirmation under the penalties of perjury that you meet the criteria that Margaret's just enumerated, that you're a U.S. citizen, you live in Montgomery County, and you're a resident of the state of Maryland. And we have had occasions, quite frankly, where we've had people go through MVA, get registered to vote, they're not U.S. citizens, and they come forward and say, I was inadvertently registered to vote.
Right.
And
We haven't had people that went to MVA and registered to vote and voted that were not citizens. We don't know.
We don't know.
No, you don't know. You don't know. We have examples of people that have come forward and said, maybe it was miscommunication or some other issue, but they were registered.
Now, as professionals, what can we do to make sure that non-registered, non-citizens don't vote?
Prosecute the ones that do vote.
No way to do it up front.
How to find out?
That's what I'm asking. I just want to get it on the record.
Good.
The scenario actually that you just described, what the consequence for someone who is not recognized as a, the most likely scenario that I would think why somebody would not be flagged as the eligible in the motor vehicle files would be probably because they don't have your social security number. And if they don't have your social security number, they don't have evidence of permanent lawful presence, which is their criteria. They don't really draw that line at citizenship. If you are a permanent resident or a citizen who has a social security number, then you're in this category of information that would be asked if you're a citizen or not in order to then opt in for the voter registration. If they don't have that evidence that you meet that standard, then they exclude you right from the get-go. So we probably do have some number of individuals that the Motor Vehicle Administration does not have citizenship information for, and therefore the consequence would be if you walked into early voting, you would not have been included on that list.
And you vote
If you were not a registered voter to begin with.
So
you're already there because you're a registered voter, but you wouldn't be on this additional added group of
So to be a
potentially
pre-qualified
eligible
voter, you
voters.
have to have your social security number with MVA?
I believe
Because
so.
MVA, I mean, Virginia used, I don't know if they still use, but they used to use social security numbers as their driver's license numbers.
Yeah.
Maryland has intentionally not done that. I personally would not dream of giving the MVA my social security number.
I'm stepping outside of my area of expertise here, but
That's the point, though, David. It's unclear at this point exactly what is the process that MBA and the state have.
Is that becoming clear on the 11th? Is that what you? I'm not clear what you're doing on the 11th.
We're being trained on how they expect to implement same-day voter registration. The questions that you are currently asking, I would hope that the state has worked through.
And you will hear that on the 11th.
I hope so.
Will you be asking some of the questions that we
I
brought
will
up?
now.
I don't know if a board member perhaps could audit that or go to that meeting, or I don't even know if that's a good idea, Jim.
Was it a staff, just staff for staff?
Well, it's really going to be focused on the technical piece of MD voters. I mean, we'd have. I'm not going to stop you from attending, but I think that I'm not really sure it would be beneficial.
Now, isn't all this up to the state legislative? This is the law.
But the issue is,
I don't know how
we
clear
talked
the
about
law is as well.
last month, and I think the issue that's a concern is how does one become the pre-qualified voter?
Exactly.
And what safeguards are in place to ensure the accuracy of the information that's going to be
The
used?
accuracy of the information is
for
obviously
everybody
what
to
we're
register people.
involved with.
Well, and this isn't spoken to in the law, I don't believe, right?
same-day
This is the regulation
Right,
that's being put
exact-
together by the
exactly.
state.
Exactly.
And
the
you
law
know,
does not distinguish
Right,
between
right.
between this pre-registration.
But
and
it
this-
created the same-day vote registration.
The law created same-day
Yeah,
registration, and the regulation is creating these two categories based on information that MVA has. And if having our social security number is part of that, that would be a great concern. I mean, I would guess there'll be
or
a,
whatever
you know,
evidence you needed to provide to get a real ID eligible driver's license.
right. I don't know how that I don't know how that works, but and I should say my understanding is that we have not been presented with evidence that non-citizens have been voting or attempting to vote in Montgomery County. We have been presented with evidence that non-citizens have been inadvertently registered to vote by MVA, and in fact, I think Gracie told us stories of people in that category are very worried because they don't want to be accused of fraud; they'll be deported. So in that category, if it happens by accident, they have as much incentive as anybody to get off the rolls.
That's a good point.
Okay, well, I will get this letter prepared and circulated
Great.
this week.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
That's it.
Okay, we're going to go to old business and the voting system launch, Margaret. Allison?
We're on. We're on for September 22nd at 10 a.m. at Riderwood.
11 a.m.
11 a.m. at Riderwood. It was 10 a.m. on the 16th original. It's 11 a.m. 11 a.m. September 22nd, 11 a.m. at Riderwood. We are going to be using the Celebrations Catering Room, which is actually the polling location at Riderwood for Prince George's County. It's in the actual room where that precinct votes for Prince George's County. And we are confirmed on the calendar for both county executives. The Riderwood is handling the invitations to various of the individuals' clubs, the League of Women Voters, the Democratic and Republican parties there at Riderwood. We are going to be bringing our equipment to demonstrate to the voters there, and we are the county executive's calendar that went out their week ahead or month ahead story planner for reporters included this on the county executive's calendar, and we're working with the PIO's office on the press releases and other kinds of outreach for that. Now, because it is on National Voter Registration Day, we are going to have a series of other events going on simultaneously, really going on across the county. Gilberto is working on some outreach activities that are going to be going on at Montgomery College. And do you want to speak at all to the rest?
We're confirming efforts at Test Center in Silver Spring, Montgomery College campus in Rockville. The Fraser Community Center has been confirmed, and we're looking at doing an empowerment effort at the metro stations within Montgomery County. The 6 specific ones are Shady Grove, Rockville, Wheaton, Silver Spring, and Groves. Those are the 5 sites. Excuse me?
What form does that take?
That would be in the morning during the AM rush hour on the 22nd to distribute information and literature to Montgomery County voters. Then we'll follow up with the kickoff at Riderwood. At the end of Riderwood, we'll have demonstration opportunities off-site from Riderwood so the county can go to different locations in the county and we'll facilitate their participation.
Safety voting machines?
Yes, yes. We'll have an off-site demonstration at those locations.
Oh, really?
We'll get that in writing for the minutes.
Thank you.
Can we also inform the elected officials who are on both sides of that border there?
Yeah. That's in the plan.
Okay.
And you want us there to sit and smile? I mean, is this, okay.
Yes, hopefully everybody can come. And you'll have staff there too, Margaret?
Yeah, we'll be
Great.
the demonstrators.
Good. Allison did a great job. You know, originally this was set for September 16th. Margaret was away, and Allison really worked the phones and got this changed to September 22nd.
And is it going to be people sitting in there and looking at a demonstration, or is the demonstration going to be ongoing as people walk in? Are they going to be allowed to vote? Is there going to be it's going to be a mock election, and the people that live in Riderwood can come in and vote?
Both counties will be there, and we will have plenty of equipment. Obviously, we need to walk through just a general demonstration I know at least 2 cable stations are going to be there. Riderwood has their own in-house cable, and then of course Montgomery Cable. Plus, we're hoping some NBC, CBS affiliates, whatever, could show up. We have to go through all of the steps to demonstrate the equipment, but then we plan to continue to demonstrate the equipment for as long as people are interested in observing.
And one assumes the 2 county executives are going to speak and talk about the importance of, I mean, is that how this is going to be presented? That was my question. At 11 o'clock, somebody introduces the 2 county executives, they tell us all to vote, and then somebody demonstrates the machines.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
In terms of the other outreach activities, I know when we met with the Board of Education, we mentioned, I don't think we knew the dates at that time. We knew it was in September, the National Registration Day, and potentially doing something in the schools then. Is this? I recognize it's a little close to the start of the school year. I just wondered if anything was in place with this.
Yeah, so what we're doing is with our future vote ambassadors, I'm going to give them the first 2 weeks of September to kind of let the dust settle. Today was the first day of school.
If you come up to the table, Lisa can hear it better for the minutes.
Okay. Thank you. So since today was the first day of school, I'm allowing staff and students 2 weeks to kind of, get their day according, their lockers, etc. I've tasked the future vote ambassadors to work with the business managers to set up another series of voter registration and 17-year-old election judge recruitment at high schools. So once they initiate that, we'll work with the business manager like we did that soft launch in May, June, to get those individuals involved in the process. Then we will go back after winter break to do another round of outreach and empowerment, and also to recruit future vote students with kind of our list serving with the families. Right now we're finalizing 5 training dates for future vote. We need to recruit about 2,000 students. So those schools are going to be Richard Montgomery, Montgomery Blair, Walt Whitman, Paint Branch, and Northwest High School. So I hop around the county to facilitate participation. That training session will take the first 2 weeks in March. So right now we are working with the school system closely, but like I mentioned, I'm going to give them these 2 weeks so the dust settles for the students, and then they'll start activating their efforts on our behalf.
Great. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask that we have sort of a report on the questions about signs? And I know the signage has been talked about before up on Connecticut Avenue going to the early voting site in Chevy Chase.
Can we wait till we
We
get to
have
early voting?
early voting.
But,
All
yeah,
right, sure, happy to do that. Just want to make sure we don't miss it.
We're still on the voting system launch, or
If you have any more questions.
Do you have any more questions with regards to?
hope everybody can make it.
Okay. Then the next other would be the MVA SBE audit response. That was we were copied on with the Joint Audit Committee.
Have that as well. What you have in your packet, and what's triggering this as an old business item here, I believe, is the August 7th letter that you received from the Motor Vehicle Administration. What this really is we were copied on correspondence that was going to the Joint Audit Committee. The other documents that you have in your packet, really just for your convenience. The first is what the purpose of these is to kind of put in context what this August 7th letter is and where it fits into the overall picture and set of conversations that the board has been having. The timeline sets forth kind of the history of it. Fundamentally, last November, the board sent its letter to the Joint Audit Committee requesting a comprehensive audit. In January, the Motor Vehicle Administration and the State Board of Elections responded to a set of questions from the Joint Audit Committee. And then the Joint Audit Committee said, we're not going to conduct an audit at this time, but we're going to follow up in 6 months. So in order to inform that, in April, the board formally responded to the Motor Vehicle Administration and the Joint Audit Committee, first expressing appreciation for a series of improvements that the Motor Vehicle Administration did make to their software and their processes last January, but then also highlighting some additional concerns that the board still had. And then in May, the Motor Vehicle Administration responded to those concerns. This August letter is
that
sort
in
of
this?
not directly, yeah.
Where's the May response?
It's not directly responding to any of the most recent correspondence
Right,
from us.
that's exactly.
It's effectively sending a very similar response as what the Motor Vehicle Administration sent last January.
Exactly.
To the Joint Audit.
Actually, the history to this, Allison, I spoke with Margaret, who I presume passed this on to you after talking with Jim about it, and with Jackie, because Jackie, you'll recall, initiated the idea of the audit. I was shocked at seeing this latest response because it read to me like the same old, and so what I had requested for this meeting was a side-by-side, because we, in our response to their January letter, we had additional things that they still were not addressing, which what comes front of my mind is the fact that we don't get a summary page at the end of your registration process where somebody can review it. And their response to that was, oh, you can just, go back and scroll back through the pages and look at it. Well, that's not... No reference to this in this letter was what I thought, and you're now saying that's the case, right?
Yeah, to that request, you do have this chart in your packet as well, where what I strove to do in it, the left column summarizes the concerns that the board stated in its April 16th letter. The center column summarizes the MBA's response in its May letter, and the right column sort of lays out some comments, sort of a status report on each of those items. The original side-by-side chart that the board reviewed was very long and went into a whole lot of issues that the board ultimately decided in its April 16th letter not to highlight. So this kind of limits it down to those 6 issues. The 5th being the one that you just stated, the lack of a confirmation screen, which the board has indicated has been a priority. The Motor Vehicle Administration's position in its May letter was that the voter is capable of, or the customer is capable of scrolling forward and backward through the screens, and therefore a summary screen is not necessary. So to summarize, the concerns about non-citizens being registered to vote, the board in its April 16th letter expressed appreciation to the Motor Vehicle Administration for adding the yes, no, I am a U.S. citizen screen, which had not previously been present, and for making that process voter-driven so that the likelihood of, or the ability of the clerk to just click through and end up with a situation where at least the voter was not the one making those selections was A, reduced, and B, there's a trail behind that. If the clerk is taking over the process, then there is an override that is triggered and that is retrievable. The second was and I have not personally received any reports of any complaints about that bypass happening. That voters, every report that I've received, and I think other board staff have received, has been the voters have experienced being able to drive that process themselves if they saw it.
This is for new driver's license only, correct? Because none of this happened when I got my driver's license renewed 6 weeks ago.
It did not happen for you
because you're an alien.
Because you're an alien.
Because I'm an alien. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, when my mother renewed her driver's license, she did have some of this.
And she got to drive it, right?
Well, at the point where you had to decide whether you wanted to register, she had to personally touch the screen in order to decide what to do.
But they never asked me if I was a citizen or not.
Because they assumed you weren't. Because of what they had in their system, which is again part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because who knows how many people are out there who are citizens who the MVA isn't offering this opportunity to.
I go back, there needs to be an audit of how accurate their records are of people with driver's license. Thing I asked for originally and has been turned down. Some good has come of it, obviously not enough.
Well, now we need to add the question of how do they determine whether someone's an alien or not? Because if it's based on Social Security information...
It seems to me everybody who gets their driver's license originally or get it renewed should be asked, are you a citizen? Right? And then would you like to register to vote?
Well, I just had my license renewed and it went through the whole thing, and as David said, when it came to the screens related to voter registration, I was the one that had to make the selections on the screens. They
and I
everything and I was allowed to
They did not ask me at all. I had to say, you didn't ask me if I wanted to register to vote. And he said, that's because you're an alien. And it seems to me I should have been asked, are you a citizen somewhere along the way?
The second one, just to continue the summary, is really focused on this question of the override and making sure that the customer has the choice and not the agent. We had requested effectively access to that data on whether there was an override and that be included in the voter record when it comes through to us. And the Motor Vehicle Administration's response effectively says that they would be happy to work with the state board on something like that.
Yeah, we know it.
But not us.
The third item raised in the board's April letter was about voters reporting that they were not presented with the voter registration information. The third column is clearly already outdated because that says that our staff has not received reports of this problem since the programming changed in January, but we just received a report from a board member of not being presented with the voter registration information, although you know more about why that was occurring in your case.
Yes, which one did you go? Which center did you go?
Where did I go? I went up to White Oak.
There was also a concern that we continued to express about scenarios where someone who is online or using the kiosk doesn't see the screens. The Motor Vehicle Administration said that they felt the issue had been addressed, and again, we haven't received additional reports, so it's hard to rebut that that has been resolved or not. Hard copy voter registrations, the letter from the board had sought to take tracking down to the individual voter level of paper applications received at the Motor Vehicle Administration to provide the board with a tool for researching situations where a voter comes forward and says, but I dropped off my form at the Motor Vehicle Administration, and we say, we have no record of you. If there were a record at the individual level at the Motor Vehicle Administration, that would provide that tool. The MVA's response effectively says that they're following the instructions they've been given by the state board. The lack of a confirmation screen we already discussed. And then we have an additional issue that was raised in the letter about challenges with mailing addresses, which the Motor Vehicle Administration said they would review and address. There has not been further detailed follow-up on that set of issues. There's one other piece of paper you have, which was my attempt to square some of the concerns that the board has also been raising at recent meetings with the state of play on these issues in the previous correspondence. One was the reports of individuals saying that their voter record was not found at the MVA, which was not a scenario that had been addressed in some of the prior correspondence or documents. In each case where that has been reported to board staff, what we have found was that that person did not have a driver's license number in their voter record. So no import of that data has come from the MVA at any point. Now, if the voter said yes, and they did wish to go ahead and register, the data would come into us, and it would come in as a new registration, but our staff would make a match, and they would identify that that's an existing voter and merge those two records.
Would that be what happened then to David's mother? No driver's license.
There was no driver's license.
Is a driver's license a requirement to register to vote? I mean, presumably if you're not driving, you can still vote.
Right. Either your driver's license number or the last 4 digits of your social security number. If we get the match with the Motor Vehicle Administration, then...
How long has this been a requirement?
Since the beginning.
I'd say the beginning. I mean, I'm pretty sure my mom registered to vote around the time I was born.
Many voters use their last 4 of their social security number. When we get the match with the driver's license number, then it's listed in the file. That allows for the match between our file and the Motor Vehicle Administration, and that has not been made for some number of records. The last one on my list is what we have learned over the course of this process about the situations that would give rise to really the initial issue, the initial set of questions that started a lot of these conversations about the motor vehicle data, which was the reports from voters that they had been registered with a political party, and then somehow when they went to the Motor Vehicle Administration, they came back as unaffiliated. I think we've now learned more about that process to understand how such a thing can occur. Again, if it's coming through as a new registration, and if say the clerk was taking control of the process and the voter was not making the selections themselves, it would be quite possible that somebody would simply, yes, they were registering to vote, come through as an unaffiliated voter. When that came through as a new voter to our board, to our office, to the board's offices, our staff would look at that and see that as a match with an existing registration, but that unaffiliated party selection would have overridden their previous party selection because this was new information coming to us from the Motor Vehicle Administration, looking like the voter had made that unaffiliated selection. So that explains sort of the data flow of how such a situation could occur. And now this process, this outcome of last January, the Motor Vehicle Administration changing their processes so that the voter is driving it, at least gives you that additional layer of understanding that if the unaffiliated box is checked and the override button is not, then it was the voter who made that unaffiliated selection. A report on research findings, effectively. What the board wishes to do at this step in following up on concerns that are priority for you is really up to the board.
Well, yeah, I wanted, and thank you very much. I think this is very thorough report on this, Allison, and we can't keep beating a dead horse, so to speak, here. I mean, we've, gone back after one reply and said thank you, but, we need more, etc. I'm sorry Senator Kagan couldn't stay because she's actually on the Joint Audit Committee. But they have taken care of some of the issues, but it's like what's the game when things keep popping up? We knock down one or two of them, and something new pops up. And I think, our real concern now is because this is going to be so tied to the same-day registration. But I don't know if the board thinks there's anything further we can do at this time, or.
Well, I can't. If you give me a copy after the meeting, if you give me a copy of your driver's license number, I can begin the process and find out how.
I'd like to know what my registration looks like. Yeah, I'd be glad to do that.
Well, we can do that. I mean, we can have a copy. Can we? Can we pull her registration, Lily? Mm-hmm. We can pull that for you. Could you do that now?
Thank you.
Is it worth correspondence to the state at this point, indicating that we continue to have, amongst a very small group here, I mean, how many of us are there around this table that have had our own individual issues? And I didn't have time today before the meeting, but I do have to, my driver's license is going to expire at my birthday in October, and I can hardly wait.
Watch out, MBA.
Yeah, I think I wondered about thanking them for working with us, saying we'd like to leave it open that we can continue with issues that continue to come up, or some matter like that. I think that we don't want to close it down, like saying, "Oh, you're wonderful, you've done everything that we've asked." But certainly, like you say, we don't want to continue working. I think as things come up, we need to be.
But I think one just did, which is your situation, because their answer here suggests that if you didn't see the screen, it may be a result of timing out. And that's the only explanation they gave. And so it seems to me that that's an opportunity for us to write to them and say, well, not exactly, because here is this other situation, and maybe we can get an answer from them as to how they determine, who's in what category.
I wasn't using the screen at all. The man was asking me questions, and I was answering them. And
right. You didn't get it for a reason that's different than the explanation that they gave. I mean, this is a new explanation that we had not heard until you faced it. And like Marianne says, I mean, if we're facing this in our small numbers here, we can only imagine what the numbers are that are actually facing it out there. I'm just wondering whether we want to at least follow up on that issue and ask the question of, how they determine who doesn't get the screen, because clearly it's more than just timing out.
Right. Also, though, if there was a summary, if one had a summary page to look at, Jackie presumably would have been able to look at that summary and seen that the information that's contained on it is not correct. It's really not just information moving forward. You could have information that's been in their system for a long time that's just flat out wrong.
And that's what happened to me.
The information for Jackie's wrong. I mean, she is a U.S. citizen.
Right.
So
which you only found out because you knew they should have been asking you about your voter registration, which the average MVA person
doesn't even know.
Doesn't have a clue.
But then it kind of goes back full circle with this idea of what we wanted in the first place, which was a summary screen that says, is all the information that's contained here, is all this accurate? And if you would have had that, you would have, if the box would have said, no, you're not, you're listed as not a U.S. citizen.
Well, what I would suggest is that I'll get your driver's license number and do that. If you want, I could invite a member of the State Board staff to be available to answer questions, maybe not in September, but October.
Well, this question is really for the MVA.
This is for MVA. But the only question I have at this point for the State Board, I don't think we ever got a response, which goes back to when Jackie and I attended the State Board meeting, and they were going to ask the other counties if anybody else was having a situation like this. I've never heard a response on that. Whether, they did in fact survey the other counties or what response they got. But yeah, I think our primary concern is still that summary page that really should conclude every one of their...
and are you a U.S. citizen needs to be on there for everybody, whether they're renewing their license or getting their first license. That you push a button that says yes. What are we going to do about it? You're going to write a letter, Jim, asking about that particular thing?
This gentleman's got a... Yes, sir.
Oh, the examples you've been using about people encountering this with the MTA have to do with renewing your license. Your old license expired. So, what I'm thinking is that residents of Maryland are supposed to tell the MTA when they change their addresses, and this is likely to occur much more frequently for younger folk who move from one place to another as their jobs change. And so, even the instances that you've observed amongst yourselves are probably just a small fraction of real problems. I think the younger voters probably find themselves being listed as known party or what have you, thanks to MTA, much more than you do.
Thank you.
Are the issues all within the same scope as the letter that Kevin's already preparing, or is it a second letter?
Can we put it all together? Would that be a fit?
I think one goes to MVA,
one
goes to the State Board of Elections.
Right.
Because obviously the State Board, it's their regs as to same-day registration.
But the MVA is dealing with the state, not the local boards.
Right. Right, but then something else would be to MVA regarding Jackie's experience and echoing our concerns that maybe the information is not accurate. A simple remedy to that would be to have a summary page so that every time someone goes through to get a new driver's license and or to renew their license, they're at least given the opportunity to see and confirm that the information is accurate.
Now, they signed that, correct? Didn't we decide that they should sign that so that we have a signature on it? Isn't that's been a point of discussion in the past?
Well, that's what the board asked was, to have a summary page where you basically acknowledge that the information is accurate. And that way, it's the onus is on the person doing the renewal that's affirming that the information is correct.
Kevin, could you work with Mary Ann on drafting a letter?
Yeah, and that there is a square that says, I am a U.S. citizen on it, that people have to, whether they're renewing or not, in that summary screen, that question be asked of everyone with every renewal.
Well, it is asked on everyone dealing with registration, with voter registration, and it's been made more, prevalent and whatnot on the screen. But if you're just in there renewing your driver's license and you don't want to do anything with voting, it's not going to be asked.
Well, but it should be.
Well, but is that our role?
Well, take that up with the state. I mean,
but how do we know? Well,
I mean,
it goes to the whole fiasco of MVA.
But we can only deal with the part of MVA dealing with the voting.
I agree with you.
So.
Kevin, okay?
Okay.
Yes,
thanks.
I'll take care of it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you again, Allison.
Yeah, that was excellent.
All right, going on to
Election
2016 election preparations. Early voting centers. Mrs. Keefe requested that staff visit the Mid-County Regional Service Center at 2424 Reedy Drive in Wheaton. I did have Chris go down there, and we have a very short presentation. And so while she's setting that up, I just want to remind everyone we have a public hearing on September 12 at 10 a.m. in the Executive Office Building Auditorium. The final day to receive testimony, written testimony, will be Monday, close of business on September 15. And then on September 21, the early voting center recommendations, so that we are able to prepare all the paperwork that's necessary.
That's our next meeting,
Yes.
September 21.
Right. We do have meetings going on regarding the MOU. We did meet with the Wheaton Volunteer Rescue Squad, and we have a meeting scheduled to talk to the City of Gaithersburg about the Activity Center at Ward Park.
Well, just to be clear, the letter we got from Ike Leggett and the full council,
It wasn't Ike Leggett, just the council.
No, it was Ike Leggett.
It was Ike Leggett and the full council.
Yeah.
The county's going to pick up the
And
cost
Mrs.
of a Wheaton voting center?
Well, that's what they said.
Okay.
They're going to pay for us.
The whole thing?
I guess so.
Whatever
That's what
we
they
want.
said.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we
Good.
bill them for the whole thing. We'll see
Good.
what we get paid for.
You got to find a place.
The money isn't in our line item. Okay. Chris?
All right, as Margaret said, I took a visit out to Wheaton Regional. There is the building with the entrance. It is on Reedy Drive, 2424 Reedy Drive, which is actually, it's downtown, what I consider downtown Wheaton, and it's between Georgia Avenue and Beers Mill Road. It sits behind the transit center, the metro stop and the transit.
The transit center or the metro stop?
The transit center is right next to the metro stop. They're right next to each other.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Okay.
This is from across Reedy Drive, looking at the building. You will enter there underneath the arrow. There is one entrance into the building. This is an aerial showing the entrance, and there you'll see this is Georgia, and this is Beers Mill here, and here is the transit area that's right behind the building. The parking, the main parking that's closest, there's a couple public parking areas in Wheaton. This is the main parking area. It is paid parking, and it's not dedicated to the building. It's shared by all the merchants. that's around that area.
Is that all the parking, or does it go back further?
It goes back further. It's cut off.
Okay.
I have
There's also a parking garage on the other side of Griswold Road.
And then across, in this area here is where Westfield Plaza is. So there's parking there as well.
And Metro, this is walking distance
Metro's right there.
of Metro. It's right there.
Yes, just right. It's in this area
Right.
here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's where the entrance is.
Yep.
This is a better look at the parking that's across the street. The handicap parking is there, where I have it marked. That's a better picture of the handicap parking. What would happen is if someone was to park, they would park here and come down. There's a sidewalk that follows down to the corner, and there's curb cuts and marks. They could come directly across Reedy, or they could go across and hit a light and then come up Reedy. Would be a little bit further, but for some people they might make that choice. This is the room. It's 440 square feet approximately. It's about half the size of this room here.
That's pretty
That's
small.
it?
This is the room for what?
This is the meeting room that's in this building. That would be the room that we would have the opportunity to use for early voting.
It's half the size of this room?
Half the size.
Yes. This room I measured when I got back, 750 square feet.
That's the only space available?
Yes. They have a smaller room on the second level.
So it's not even connected.
No, it's not where we could join the two together.
What would be the normal size of a room that you would?
3,000 square feet.
That's
Why are we looking at?
Really?
Not even close.
Because Mary Ann asked to look at it. So
Well,
This is Mary Ann's site.
This is no. When we were brainstorming, and recognizing we had a problem with the site in Wheaton, and it was one that we really hadn't looked at before. 2 years ago, when we were looking at everything.
I went and I looked 2 years ago, but because of its size, it really didn't make the cut. The size of the room.
Yeah.
Thank you for your effort.
And Chris, they don't have any rooms where they have walls that you can...
No, it's a small location. And like I said, on the second level, they offered another room, but the second room on the second level is smaller than this one. This is just another vantage point, looking from the door. This is the other end of the room. This is the entrance
That's too small.
from
Too small.
the vestibule into the room itself.
Thank you.
This is what the no electioneering would look like. This is the entrance, and this where we have the signs is 25 feet off that door. Now there's a second way in on the other side of the door, so that's 25 feet off the door. This on this side. This is a covered area that people would have shelter if we had lines. This is the access. This is off of Reedy, and where this car is down below here is where I mentioned that people that parked that had handicap needs would probably come down this sidewalk and cross here and up. There is a small slope, but the slope meets ADA requirements. This slope or curb cut meets ADA. There are two spaces, but they're not designated parking spaces. It's pull off and drop off. Pull up and drop off for handicap. Don't know if we could make one of those a permanent for voters during early voting. And then that is...
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah,
You're
thank you. Sorry.
What's the size of the room at the rescue squad?
The rescue squad is over 3,000 square feet.
Okay, so that was the Reedy location, and I just wanted to share that with you. Going on, is there anything else with regards to the early voting centers? You got a copy of the letter from the council members and Mr. Leggett.
So what's the bottom line with Wheaton? Do we have something that we?
We have. We have the location is right now that we met with is the Wheaton Volunteer Fire Department.
But there was a concern that they may give it to someone else.
They have not. Yesterday, when did you talk to them? Thursday?
I had conversation last week. The room is basically being held with us, but there will be some extra fees involved. One contract they canceled with the church in order to give us early voting. We will have to pay for the cleaning of the interior part of the room. She is going to provide us with shortly. She's on vacation right now, but when she comes back next week, she's to provide us with a list of all the charges that will be over and above the rental fee.
But Mr. Leggett's going to be paying for all of this, so we're not worried about it. Is that right? I mean, we don't have to worry about it in our budget.
What other charges?
We always have to worry about it.
The rental fee.
But, I just wanted you to be aware of the letter.
Was this an issue that we had asked Mr. Subin to look into?
Mr. Subin did assist us in trying to find other Wheaton locations, but he can address it. Wheaton is a private facility that did receive some county funds, but you don't have any control over the fees.
No, we have no control over that. It's like Bethesda Rescue Squad. They're private. There was some county money that went into it, but nothing substantial. So we usually, if there's a major amount or significant amount of money that goes into something, part of the agreement will be, okay, we get so many days free use. The Bethesda Conference Center is probably the best example of that.
What's the percentage? Is there a percentage that we get that from, or is it just a gentleman's agreement?
It's usually gentleman's agreement. I know when Sandy Spring was rebuilt, that was, and it was like 60-40, might have been 50-50, but for some reason I'm thinking 60-40, and there was a clear agreement in that.
Yeah, there are several locations that we've looked at in the past that there is X amount of days provided to the county, but it's not sequential days. And so, for instance, the conference center, the Bethesda Conference Center, you can have one day and not the next.
And the big problem with Wheaton was it was a large chunk of days that they would have to give up their private use for. And so that was problematic also.
Have we checked out the connectivity issues and
yes.
I presume handicap, accessibility, etc., and all of that?
All of that is done.
So once we know if there's going to be a site or something, we would be ready to move on it.
Every site that you've identified has connectivity. Janet? Okay. Jerry and Brandon finished the testing, is that correct? And we do not have any connectivity issues with any location.
With any of the 17, you're saying?
Correct. All right.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, going on to the new voting system. The state board and the election directors met on August 23rd. We have started receiving our equipment. We've received approximately 220 of the digital scanners. They were also we received one high-speed scanner. We've received approximately 160 ballot marking devices. If you check our Facebook page, we've been showing pictures of the various pieces of equipment coming in. More equipment is scheduled to arrive this week. Training for same-day voter registration for a lot of the staff will be on September 11th. Other staff will be trained a little later in the month. The testing of the software fix was completed. They've commenced reinstalling the software into the voting system. There's a mock election exercise taking place tomorrow that our operations people are going to go over to Howard County to see how the new cards, those big black cards that you saw, how they're going to prepare for supplies to be placed in them, as well as the equipment and the various pieces that are involved with that. Training on the ES&S election electionware is going to be occurring on September 17th and 18th. For our IT people, Allison and I will be trained a little bit later. Election director, we're going to have a mock election planning session exclusive to that one. They're talking about late September at this point. As I mentioned, the cart configuration exercise tomorrow. The EPB software upgrade, that software upgrade is supposed to come in today or sometime this week. They're going to be continuing to do testing for functionality. All of that software will be used in the mock election. So whatever they finally come up with by mid-September or the latter part of September will be at least uploaded on 40 or so poll books so that we can conduct the mock election. And we're going to use the old software for the City of Rockville election on the poll book. Is that correct? Okay. Train the Trainer is going to begin. For us, it'll be in December. And then just the general deadlines. Candidate filing deadline is February 3rd of 2016. Ballot proofing will begin on the 5th of February. Overseas ballots will be mailed and emailed March 12. Early voting the 14th and 21st of April of 2016. And election day is April 26th. Mock elections testing sites will be here in Germantown. We will actually be running the election out of the downstairs classroom. October 19th is the first day. We'll be testing for voter interactive experience by mostly staff and some of our temporaries that have been helping us out. We're going to, Allison and I talked the state into allowing us to try to link 22 poll books together for Silver Spring, Germantown, and Praisner to see if it'll work. Right now, they said we can link 15, and we're going to try to get it up to 22 to prevent any lines from forming, as was witnessed in 2012, the 2-block lines down Silver Spring. So we're going to test it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, we'll try 15. Obviously, you know how important it is for the poll books to talk to one another so that the information is current not only within the county, at the site, but within the county and statewide.
Why would they not let you do it? What would be the reason?
Well, there's two different approaches you can take to a mock election. One is you just want everything to come out perfectly, or you can have perspective that Allison and I have, is to test the outer limits. And if it crashes and burns, then we have 4 shots at testing this. So we are simulating 4 different days of early voting. So we believe that if it doesn't work out with 22, we'll try 15. If it doesn't work with 15, we'll try 12. And we'll just keep finding out what'll work. Obviously, the public discussion remains. The lines are not to exceed 30 minutes. In 2012, when we had the lines that we did, Maryland was 3rd in the nation with the longest lines. And Montgomery County, when we talked to Charles Stewart, when he looked at the Maryland numbers, I think we were 6th. But in our longest lines were an average of 33 minutes. So but if you were the person standing out at Silver Spring, and maybe you were 7 or 8 months pregnant, that 2-block wait was too long. So, I mean, we weren't the worst in the county, or of all the counties, but we definitely are going to try to make sure that our lines are, that, you know, except for the last day. The last day during the last 4 hours, I mean, that's the world's procrastinators. Everybody, I want to do it, and so that I can't guarantee the last 4 hours of the last day of early voting. All right, let's see. And that's pretty much to date. We have the testing of the interactive review planning, and that's it.
You had a letter you wanted to bring up, Margaret?
I do. I'm going to bring that up under new business.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Under new business, Margie, you want to talk about the warehouse? Yeah, I'm going to do that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Did we do voter outreach?
We're going to do that after the warehouse.
And you're going to do the signs after the warehouse?
We're going to do that too.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's a little confusing.
All you have to do is invite them.
No, that's not what I was saying. As you all know, we underwent, we obtained some additional space in the building, and we have been undergoing a renovation in the lower level of the building to accommodate the new voting system. It's been a fun 6 weeks around here, but the warehouse reconfiguration is now completed. There are a few punch list items that are still being worked on, but the basic majority of the work is done. So I wanted just to let the board know that. If anybody would like to go downstairs after the meeting and have me show you what we did, I'd be more than happy to do that. So just wanted to make that offer to you.
Okay, then committees. Jim, you had asked about the budget committee.
Right. Well, as you know, Naheed's going to head up the budget committee. I don't think we've heard from who wants to be on that with her.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
Ready on.
I had indicated.
Oh, okay. Publicly, you good to go?
Publicly, I'm good to go.
Okay. I didn't know. I wanted for you
because
to.
they were deciding.
Yeah. So Marianne's going to be on the budget committee. I've asked Alex to head up a outreach and communications committee, but Alex couldn't be here today. He had a work emergency.
I have a question about that. Do I understand correctly that there's only one slot available for our side on that committee?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll defer to Gracie. Let her take that slot.
All right. Okay.
So that's it? You don't have to ask her? I mean, just because she's not here.
I know that I don't speak Spanish, and I know that that's an important part of our outreach.
Okay.
And so I know that I'll defer to her. Okay. I mean, yes, I'll ask her when when she's available. As you know, she's not available now. But
okay.
But I'll
committee meeting. We don't speak Spanish. We speak English. What has to do?
No, I'm aware that I don't need to speak Spanish in order to participate in the meeting. But I do think that our outreach to our Spanish-speaking voters is really important, and that she has something she can contribute to that I can't. So, so that's what.
Okay.
I will share with Alex in that committee.
Yeah. Okay. Then with regards to